Hey everyone, Levin here. Today I'm going to be joined by Somebody's Gun. We essentially just did a breakdown of all of the, key highlights from the Fortnite World Cup that took place this weekend. So this is just basically our analysis over all of the important things that we noticed, all of the important highlights that we noticed. So we have game 1, 2, and 3 of the Duo World Cup. In this video, we will be releasing games 4, 5, and 6 later, and then we'll do the same for solos. Hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully you can learn something from this. Just pick up what we're saying the positives are and try to apply that to your game, and I'm sure you'll definitely see a big impact there. So we're just gonna get right into it. Hope you enjoy the video.
So we start here with Eclipse and Tectra taking out Landjock and Punisher. Landjock, Punisher have a terrible first 5 games here, finally pick it up at the end, but to start, they just get punished from the beginning.
Like when I was watching it via the viewing party I was doing, that was obviously the first, because on the Fortnite website that they provided, they had an action feed, and obviously that was the first thing everyone noticed, being those 2 dino spawn. And like you said, they had a bad couple games, but that's just the nature of the tournament with how everyone gets contested. I think they struggled to, like you said, to pick things up, and it was too late for them.
You really don't know what you're gonna get, and I know they dropped a couple different spots here. Didn't really seem to have a work out to the last game, but did have a solid last game to at least put themselves on the board there.
Yeah.
Now we have Yu Wang and KBB battling Vinny and Zexro. Vinny gets dropped here, and Zexro's trying to hop out of the box and distance himself to get some shield here, where KBB actually gets picked up, and Zexro probably should have pushed this a lot earlier because he winds up paying the ultimate price.
So this bit was interesting to watch, because obviously going into this, Zexro had an interview on stream, which kind of, they talked about, his injury and how, like, he was one of, like, the pioneers of this kind of W key era, and obviously recent performances haven't been as good, and obviously it's good that he was able to qualify. So I'm watching this, I see Vinny get knocked, and I'm obviously quite, I'm a bit nervous for him, but they had the player knocked, they had one of the opponents knocked, and they go to res, and I'm saying, Zexro, push, like, this is now the time you push, but he waited, and then he kind of takes, we see here now, he's taking the fight a lot later, and he opens up a window edit when there's 2 players in the box trying to shoot him, and it's like, it was a big misplay, I think, and
he has no chance once the 2 players get up. I mean, these guys are too good to allow a 2-on-1, even if they're low health. The only thing I can think of there is those Zexro can't hear. As you know, sound is a huge part of the game, and I know the players mentioned with the stadium surround sound going on, it was not as easy to hear things. So maybe he wasn't able to hear where they were in that box, because you do see him searching and trying to find where those players are. Yeah. But for a player like Zexro, who pioneered the box fight and the aggressive play, it's really questionable why he sits back and doesn't go ahead and try and finish that fight.
And if anything, at that level of play, you have to be considering timings at all times. Like, he's got to know that once he leaves that situation to recover, he has to be counting 10 seconds in his head, and to consider the fact that the player is going to try and get up his teammate. So I don't know. I just felt that was a really weird play right there. And obviously, I think, if anything, maybe he was just confident in the drum gun, because with that weapon, I have seen a lot of clips of people taking those weird fights in boxes, and just the nature of that gun is, like, you can sometimes get away with it, but It's the Fortnite World Cup, man. Like, you can't take those risks. I just want to say with Quinton and Lanouf, right? Going into the event, like, from, talking to different competitive players and different pros around the scene, a lot of people were kind of questioning them Obviously, they got picked up by Navi. Congratulations to them. They were able to qualify in the first place, so congratulations to them. But in terms of pure ability and the competition that was there, a lot of people were questioning them. Now, to go out to Storm Surge like that, especially in the first game, I remember when I spoke to Speedy Gonzalez, he even made tweets about it, like, going into the World Cup, if you are someone who is more of a passive player, you know you're not going to take a lot of fights, you had to have had a Storm Surge plan. Now, in this first game, when we'll get to it later, we see the numbers, like, the amount of people that dropped and died to Storm Surge, a lot of people probably didn't have the best plans in place, or maybe it's just the first game, nerves, jitters, I don't know, people weren't hitting certain shots, but, like, to die that early to Storm Surge, it was a bit questionable. I was watching that and I was kind of looking at it sideways, like, how do you allow that to happen? I don't know if you have a take on that at all, if there's anyone you noticed who had similar within the game. But
there's no one I really recognize that, besides these two that they showed during the stream, that were affected by Storm Surge. Now, a little later on, we see what a player should do when Storm Surge hits.
Yeah.
Granted, not everyone is as good as Mega, but that guy literally starts ticking and goes on the offensive to give himself enough damage to get above that threshold.
Yeah. It's always interesting with this event when you see all these different players turtling and, like, you see the players that they're surrounded by, and I think it's just this for me when watching was a time to just kind of look and be like sit in awe of just everything that was happening, all the players you see in the zone here. You see so many big names, and it's just interesting to see how they interact with each other. Obviously, I think now we're getting to some more interactions between players.
Right. As a fan of Fortnite and someone who plays themselves, these are the top players in the world, and it's one of the coolest things to watch them play at the highest level and how they look to take engagements versus how they look to disengage, because it's not always in your best interest to take every fight and go for more eliminations.
Yeah. And I think here we just saw Mongrel die as Meech was able to escape. And as the zone's closing in, Kluja and his duo are trying to move forward, and they've now collided with Dubs and Mega, and obviously they have the utility to be able to get rid of Dubs, essentially, and that leaves Mega in a situation where he's alone with Storm Surge ticking, and we see here he's fortunate to have all the shields from Dubs available to him, but there's not much you can analyze. He's just a beast. He takes the edits, goes for the shots, closes the edits, and goes and drinks more shield. It's a lot of composure. It takes a lot of composure to end the situation, but once again, he's just outskilling them, really.
Right, it is absolutely incredible what Mega does here. Most players would be freaking out that they're getting hit with Storm Surge, and he's taking damage, but has the game sense to back off, grab some shield, get himself a little more health, make that 3-piece edit, pop him, drop it, grab more shield, and continue to do that until he gets above the damage threshold. It was one of the most impressive plays that I saw during this duo competition. Now, if you're a fan or even an aspiring player, these two, Saf and Zayt, are two of the best to watch. They play so good as a team, communicate so well, and move as a single unit. If you're someone trying to better understand how to play as a duo, or just trying to even understand what the top players are like, watch these two, because they play as a single player, and it's incredible as the chaos goes on around them, yet they stay together, they stay in sync, and continue to communicate, and not only move forward, but destroy lobbies. Like, they will go ahead and take down multiple players. It's very impressive to watch and take care of it.
So we haven't even gotten into King. Obviously, this is duos, and he obviously performed pretty well in solos, and that's where a lot of people will recognize his name from now. But when looking at King, when looking at even here, Ziff and Ronaldo, and Zay earlier, the way people maneuvered mid ground, the players who were successful, that I saw were the ones who were able to maneuver mid ground the best, to understand when is the right time to change layers and change what level you're on. Like you see here, Ziff, or Ronaldo actually, sorry, is constantly going up and down depending on what's going on around him, and being able to be aware of what's happening on your layer and whether it's beneficial for you to stay on that layer is very effective. And then looking here, we have Mr. Savage in high ground. He was obviously with Benji, and they were able to take high ground. I missed it here, but we have this formation. If you look at how they're playing the high ground, they had a formation: Savage tarping out in front, Benji behind. Unfortunately, though, what happened to them is they were low on shields, and somebody kind of impulsed up and was able to eliminate Savage. But genuinely, when you watch the better players, you'll see them have a similar formation. Saf and Zay, we're going to see them do a similar thing in Game 1 and Game 2. It allows you to cover more area of the zone. It helps you to get better limbs and it helps you to stay reinforced. But of course, it just didn't work out for Benji and Savage there.
Right, and actually Saf and Zay were the one that take down Mr. Savage. Yeah. And then as soon as they see that one of those players on high ground is down, you just saw them. They push straight up and they go ahead and start punishing everyone below. Like what you were talking about, I call this covering the zone. You have one player on one end of the zone, one player on the other, whether it be the front or back, left, right. One player makes sure that they're looking and covering their side of the builds. The other one is looking back and moving towards the storm. That way they have two angles to look down and pressure. And when it comes to the end of the game here, I mean, it's easy. All the fighting went on below them, and all they had to do was keep pressure, make sure no one came up, and finish up the battle at the end here.
Yeah. And as you see, it just allows them to drop down to the end when it's a 2v1. Scarlet recovering from just fighting Mitra, and there's nothing he's ever going to do. We've seen Safente in that position at so many LAN events, so many online events, and they never lose. I was saying it while watching it. There's no way they ever lose this situation. So props to them for winning game 1. But once again, it was only the first game of 6. Things can always change, and as we see later on, things do change. So let's get into game 2.
So Yuang's battling here with Mexi and Scram. KBB gets dropped, and somehow they're not able to capitalize on one player being down. Yuang drops them both with a combat shotgun. A little bit of power of the combat shotgun there, and also a little bit, I'd say, a misplay on Scram and Mexi's behalf.
So getting into that play a bit more, it's actually funny because Courage got that wrong, actually. So Yuang didn't actually kill both of those players with the combat. He only got one, and the other one got third-partied from a distance by somebody else.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and I think he obviously called that, so I think everyone in the arena watching, like yourself, probably thought the same, because it does look like he gets both players, but he actually didn't get both players. It was interesting because you'll see this in the other games, if you did watch that. These Chinese players were completely destroying Mexi and Scram on landing, and it's simply just due to the way they played it. So Snobby Shores is split up into, is it 5 or 4 houses? I think it's 5 houses, right? And
I want to say 5, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 5 houses, and Mexi and Scram split houses, and essentially the Chinese players, what they were doing, I'm sorry, I'm missing that. Yuang and KBB. What they were doing was that the houses they landed at were allowed them to cut off either Scram or Mexi, and it meant that the initial battle would be like a 2v1 for a period of time. And obviously, when you're landing at a building and you're not guaranteed certain loot, like you might just get a pistol, you might not get the best loot. If you're getting 2v1'd, Like, even if that's just for 10 seconds of a fight or 7 seconds of a fight, that can be the difference between you winning the fight. And I saw Destiny's Jesus, he put out kind of a graphic which showed how they were doing this and how they were landing, and it was just very interesting. That really cost Mexi and Scram the duos, in my opinion, because this didn't just happen one game, it happened multiple games, and I don't think they were able to adjust well enough, at least.
In general, in duos, it is extremely important for players to stick together and then also try and cut off another player. So a lot of box fighting happens here, and in the beginning of the game, it's a lot easier to cut off players, but you'll see as the game progresses, players will stick together like glue. Yeah. But it becomes just as important from an offensive side to attack players from two different angles in order to increase that pressure and increase your chances of winning the engagement. So right here we have Slacks and Keys. They're battling. Simple box fight here, even though it's not simple at this level. And what they're trying to do is take all of the builds so that they have control. And you see that other player pushing out and trying to gain height so that they can continue and control their builds. And Keys grabs the wall there, but the player quickly hops out. And you see that quick edit by Landjock trying to be able to take advantage. He does a little bit of damage on the Keys with that shotgun, but with these high-level players, just a little bit of damage isn't going to be enough.
I think it's interesting, actually. We see Landjock and Punisher, who are a duo who obviously died off the beginning of the last game of game one. So, like, seeing him, I don't know if they changed their landing or if they just, left Dusty a lot quicker, but where they are on the map is obviously not too far from Dusty, so it's possible that they landed and just left. But once again, it's a case of them not playing with each other and being close with each other there, and it allows the other duo to just focus one player and just go for all his builds. And then obviously they turn into a 2v1 situation. But this clip here, I think everybody remembers this. This is, I think, might be my favorite play of the whole event, really. So we have Clips and Skeptics in here fighting Oslo and Bad Sniper. All three teams that were contesting Tilted are all like actually amazing duos and know how to play Tilted well. But what happens here? They get the kill. Clips and Skeptics get the kill on Bad Sniper and Oslo, and for some reason, Skeptics is just, I don't know, he's just feeling on top of the world. He's feeling happy. Decides to put the L to the camera and then just proceeds to get absolutely destroyed by Mongo and Mitchell. They take down Clicks here, get the wall replaces, both of them once again. Like, so many of these situations where these good players are dying, it's because they're just split and they're getting focused. Like Mongo and Mitra, they're both going for your wall, and your teammates nowhere to be found, and now it puts Skeptic in a 2v1, and it just, you're never going to win that situation against players of Mongo and Mitra's caliber. Like, you're never going to win that situation. Like, at a basic level, what the most talented players are able to do in that situation is that they don't just have a 2v1 and they're both just, focusing you from the same angle. They understand that because they are so good, if they literally hit you from two different angles, there is nothing you're going to be able to do. So you just see Mongo taking the left side, Mitra taking the right side, and it completely, it means that Click is able to just, he's not able to do anything actually. He has to pick one side to fight, and that's never a good situation. And then Skeptic was so low that he was trying to escape. And in a situation where you're trying to escape from two players of that caliber and you're trying to break through edits and builds that aren't yours, once again, you're just going to be slowed down and there's nothing you can do. So, textbook work there from Mongo and Mitra.
Clicks and Skeptics stood no chance going into that engagement. They were all frazzled. They were low on health. It seemed like they didn't even have their inventory fully together going into that fight. And it's just hilarious that Skeptic throws up the L and Mongrel and Mitro quickly say, yeah, that's not happening around here, and clean up that fight. Yeah. And you see that a lot is the third-party engagements are so key to being successful in this game, because if you can come in and clean up a fight, you win both teams materials, both teams weapons, both teams healing. And if you do it at the right time, you might not even take damage. So as much as players complain about third partying, you have to do it, as it is a key to winning important engagements and gaining more weapons and materials. So we look here, Sean and Aiden are fighting Crew and Chapix, and Aiden is a controller player, which makes what he does even more impressive, as he makes regular plays that you see some keyboard and mouse players not be able to make. He's regularly being able to make builds, edit, and then hit the shot after that, and being able to do this on a controller is just ever more impressive. From going to almost no health and no materials, both Aiden and Sean are able to get the elimination onto Crew and Chapix there by what we continue to focus on, playing as a team.
So something that almost went unnoticed there is how Zayt, actually at the beginning of that clip, we see him third partying, and as he split and he's not with Saf due to the way they land and the landings that they take, which we can get into a bit later. He's obviously not in a position where he's going to go into that fight and try to fight them. So he's just spraying from a distance, disturbing the fight that's going on, and it allows the fight to delay a bit longer, because it means that even though Aiden and Sean are putting pressure on Crew and Chapix, they have to stop to kind of, make sure they are covered. And it allows Zay and Saf time to get together. It means this third party can get involved. So now that even though Sean and Aiden did a good job of cleaning up their fight, they're now in a bad position. They're now in shambles because their fight got delayed simply because they were getting third partied from a distance by Zay.
And in addition, that damage that Zay does, it may be minimal and he doesn't pick up an elimination there, but when Storm Surge has continued to play such a big factor, it gives them just that little more advantage in damage to make sure they're not taking damage from Storm Surge. Yeah. It's the little things like that differentiate the top duos from other teams. And just looking at this here, every team that we're watching is either in the same box or in the box next to those players. Yeah. I know we keep touching on this, but it is so important, is staying next to your teammate, because you will quickly get separated, and other players are so good they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's so easy at the top level, it's so easy to identify when players are split. I don't even know how to break down what just happened there. I don't know if you want to rewind and go over that, but that was...
that's just grenades. Yeah. That's just grenades. Yeah, good luck.
This was actually something that I found interesting, them going for the loot. They actually waited. I at first thought that they were using the loot to bait, because they had a nice angle on that loot. So if anybody else decided they wanted to go and get that, they would have been completely destroyed by Saf and Zay. But I think once they realized that nobody was going to make the play for it, they were able to just get the build surrounded, and they definitely benefit from getting all those mats, all the ammo, and the weapon upgrades. So props to them.
Agreed. I definitely think that they were trying to initially bait that, because you see them hesitate there.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's baiting or them just trying to make sure it's safe, but this is a big play for them.
Yeah.
Mongrel and Mitro had great builds, great weapons, and a couple of jump pads too, which then you see plays to the advantage of both Zay and Saf here moving forward.
Yeah. Because even though they mess up the initial launch pad because they just didn't look up, Saf had another one and he was able to group with Zay again.
So I find this extremely interesting. So we have Snappy and Red Rush here on high ground, and we're going to see a couple players try and contest, and at the end of this, it's Snappy trying to hold off Zexro and Vinny in a beautiful high ground retake, and Snappy just gives up. I mean, in this, they really don't have a chance, and that's what's so important about either waiting on that high ground retake till two people battle, And here it is. Zayt and Saf go for it, and both teams lose a player in it, and then eventually just give up the high ground for free to Zexro and Vinny.
And I think what's interesting is that Zayt and Saf, obviously, they tried to take it in the manner in which they did in the first game against Savage and Benji. They just used the impulse to go all the way up. But obviously this time it just doesn't work for them. I guess they just didn't hit the shots. And obviously Saf falls. Snappy's able to retake high ground, but at what cost? They use a lot of their resources, a lot of their materials, battling out for high ground, and it just means there's other players in the lobby who are plotting to take it. You know, there's always players plotting to take high ground. So when you're there battling out like that and you put too much into it, it can cost you. And we're gonna see here now, Vinny and Zextra are making that play, and Snappy is now on top of high ground alone. He doesn't have the advantage of being able to cover the zone like we discussed for game 1, as he's a solo player, and it just means they're contest him, and he can't do anything. They're going from different angles. Vinny takes a impulse grenade up, and they have high ground, and that's done. Nothing Snappy can do about that.
And at this point, it's now Zexro and Vinny's game to lose. There's 2 of them, and I think there's only 2 solos left remaining, and they quickly take these guys out and win game 2.
Interesting to see the player made that. I think that was the best play he could have made. And you know, in another world, maybe it works out for him there. He hits different shots or whatever, and maybe it's a headshot or 2. But you know, 9 times out of 10, Vinny and Zextra are gonna win that game. So
yeah, they have 300 health between the 2 of them. Item could do everything in his power to try and take them out, but 2 players of that caliber aren't going to let a solo player take them down, especially at the end of the game there.
Yeah, we will see with game 3.
Like Levin said, this battle happened every single game. Yuang and KBB battle it out with Scram and Mexi, and I don't think either team really gets a good start off of this. I think that they just battle every single time, and you can see, I think that Zexro up on Viking Mountain, just third-partying that, making it even more of a pain in the butt for these 2 guys. Yeah, it is Zexro.
Yep. So here, this is an interesting battle, because going into the event, of course, it didn't work out this way, but I had VP as one of the sleeper duos, and I said it depended on how they were at Paradise, and whether they got good loot and whether they were contested by good players. Obviously, I wasn't too aware of Crimson Spades as a duo and their ability and where they were landing, but as a whole, they outplayed the VP boys a lot of the games at Paradise, and this is an example of that. They just kind of roll them there. There's not much to analyze. Sometimes you just get outgunned.
And this is another spawn battle that happened every game. It's Wishy and Gustavo take on M11 and Deidre, and this literally happens every game. They just battle it out, and we see a lot of these happen game after game, because these players are at the top of their game, understand that, you know, give me 6 games, I'm going to win at least, let's say, 3 of these fights.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see a lot of players stuck to their guns. Now, Volks and Parpy are 2 that I was hoping to see more of, especially later on. I feel like we don't see too much of them. They do decently in the beginning, and I'm not exactly sure who they were trying to contest off spawn or even through the mid game, but they had a pretty quiet weekend.
Here we see Crew and Chapitz getting contested. They are a bit split here, and obviously that is causing problems for Crew. You see him here getting attacked from different angles now. But then the aggressors change their focus. They change their focus onto Crew, and it allows, you know, Chapitz to kind of recover and kind of regroup with him. And with Storm Surge coming in on their opponents, they're fortunate enough to be able to get the elimination on him. And now they're in a 2v1, and even though Crew gets spammed here, Chapitz is able to just alleviate the pressure coming from the opponent.
And so we saw what to do when you're getting hit with Storm Surge. This is a perfect example of what not to do. Volks and Parpy clearly just panic, and that shot by Crew is incredible. A 184 headshot clearly wins that fight for him. But Volks and Parpy really needed to understand where they were at, understand that the duo they were fighting was not together, and fight like they know how. I mean, it was a shame to see them really kind of stumble there and lose that fight as bad as they did.
So we see here Benji and Savage making use of double sniping. One of the most OP things we have in the game right now, and you know, double sniping is at a basic level how players should communicate. I think people look at it kind of linearly, like they look at it like, oh, it's just double sniping, but that should be an example of how you play as your duo. You know, one of you, the person with the heavy sniper, when you're double sniping, shoots the wall, and you hit with the other sniper, if it's another heavy or just a regular bolt action. And you should play the same with the duo. One of you takes the lead, and the other behind, kind of putting in the firepower. I think where hopefully we get a chance to look at them more within these clips. But a duo that does that perfectly is Rojo and Wolfies. They were the most consistent duo in the whole event. And you know, if you know about them as a duo, Wolfie is the firepower, Rojo is the brain, and Rojo takes lead, Wolfie follows, and he's able, with the firepower he has, they're able to be successful and stay consistent in endgame.
That's a great point there, because I think we see a lot of communication go on when players are trying to double heavy snipe, but I don't think we see that consistent communication from all of these duos throughout. Yeah. And being able to communicate, hey, I'm about to shoot this wall, let's hit this player here. Yeah. That can really make the difference between getting an elimination or simply just tagging a player once.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, Calculator and Macwood own high ground the entirety of this game. They sit up here, and to my surprise, no one can test them. Yeah. I mean, they get a couple of attempts, but nothing really that you would expect out of these top players. I mean, they're sitting on one build and no one even shoots them down. It's incredible.
I think where you have everybody trying to avoid Storm Surge on the low ground and battling it out, that is something you can be aware of. I think if you are a player who's in high ground and you're looking to control high ground for an extended period of time, look at Storm Surge. Look at you can see the damage effects from Storm Surge. If you can see a lot of players are taking damage, you know they're going to be searching for fights on their level below them, and maybe you don't have to invest as much material into keeping high ground, because it's unlikely anyone's going to contest you at that point. But that can be a lot harder to spot. But they definitely took advantage of it in this situation, and to this point that we've been talking, they still haven't been contested, and they're just able to rain down on everyone. And we see them start to take the formation we kind of discussed earlier in terms of controlling and covering the storm.
You have to credit Macwood and Calculator here, because they do a great job at continuing the pressure. Yeah. Teams do try and push up a little bit, but every time you see someone move up a level, Calculator and Macwood are right there with spraying, with the RPG, making sure no one even attempts it. In addition, this is what we've been talking about for covering the zone. So you see Calculators on the front end of the zone, and Macwood's kind of lagging behind. This is giving them the ability to get two different angles on players and really apply pressure in a more significant way. When you're just shooting, if say they were both on the same square, you're only going to be able to shoot down at one level or even one roof or ceiling. And being able to split up gives them multiple different angles to apply pressure and cause these players at the bottom problems. And Dubs and Mega, I mean, they're just chilling right under Calc and Macwood right here. And there's nothing they can do, unfortunately. There's some fighting going on below them, and Calc and Macwood literally do not give Dubs and Mega a second to breathe. No. Constantly just pressuring. You see that they're hitting the side of the build, not even just going for just the top, and causing them to think about multiple different angles.
If I'm gonna critique Mega and Dubs there, I feel like in that situation that they are in, where they are being pressured from high ground like that, oftentimes we see players dropping down to try and control the ultimate low ground rather than just being, completely pressured by the people on high ground. it took them quite a long time to make that decision to drop down, because they eventually did do it. They tried to impulse down, but I think they probably could have gone away with doing it earlier. There was 2 solos on low ground. If they are able to play together well, they get the kill on the 2 solos. Now it's a 2v2, you in low ground, and Mac would calculate in high ground. Maybe you have better chance of winning there. But, you know, once again, there's not much they can do. Macwood and Calculator played that so well that regardless, I think they were always gonna get the win. Sorry, so
yeah, that Shockwave play was just kind of upsetting. You hope to see something special there, and them really making an amazing play, but unfortunately, it's a dud, and Calc and Mac would easily take this win. It's a shame that it didn't go as they wanted, but you got to give credit to Macwood there. He finishes the game with 7 eliminations, and Calc gets 2 as well. That was a big game at that point, which put them in contention.